Well, hi everyone, how's it going? It's Ron Vaillant. Putting this video together at the very end of 2019, thought it'd be appropriate to, as you know, many people do, they reflect back on the previous year and they look forward to the new year coming up and analyze things and make some plans. And so we like to be able to do a little bit of analysis and looking into the future as to what is to transpire. And not only are we going into a new year, but we're also going into a new decade, 2020 of all things. And, it's going to be the roaring 20s, one way or the other. Something that's going to be very significant. The next decade is going to be very dramatic. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. This video might get a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and timestamp it down below. If you want to be able to refer to certain topics, you'll be able to do that and just skip through the video. I'll do that after I post this up. All this stuff takes time. And that's something I'd like to make note of here is that these videos do take a lot of time actually, and you're going to see me doing less of them in the future. I don't know how many it's going to be, maybe once a month, maybe once in a few months, I don't know. But it's worthwhile staying subscribed because you're going to hear information that you won't be able to hear other places. That has been made evident in the caribou recovery video and the world won't be the same videos. There's other interviews that I've done where I've dropped some major bombs and of information that people need to access. So anyhow, these do take a long time. Like the caribou recovery video, you wouldn't believe it, but it took me 16 hours of time to put that one together. You have to fact check everything and whatnot. And even when I was doing that video, I was outside in the cold. It was near freezing. I was out in my suit and having a hard time talking, and people are walking by, and I'm kind of embarrassed, standing in front of my camera as people are walking by. And about halfway through, I picked up my tripod and I says, I'm not doing this anymore. But then I realized I have to do this. So this is the only time because we're going to go into the debates right away and there won't be any time to do anything along those lines. So I decided to go ahead and put my tripod back down and finish it off. But the editing takes a long time too. So you got that, you got the Prince George News video, that took a fair bit of time. The Daily News one, that's worthwhile watching the beginning of that. There's some major bombshells in there talking about why we can never really get out of debt as provinces in the country. Also the Lacombe Globe article there, or that video that I made, that was probably 12 hours into that one too. So these take a lot of time, and I need to get back to regular life here, and so that's the situation there. But anyhow, the People's Party of Canada, like I've just explained, I did a lot of volunteering, a tremendous amount of time and expense actually involved in doing the campaign. I estimate it probably cost me, because I quit my job and it was at a petrochemical plant shutdown. It was very good money, important money actually. And so that, and also what I contributed to my own campaign, I'm in it for about 40 grand, $45,000. And other people have done, similar things as well. And my campaign manager was an absolute rock star, and she dedicated full-time hours and thousands of dollars herself. And I'd like to give a personal thank you to her and to all those people involved in making this a reality. That the PPC, you have the EDA, they went and did all their work to go ahead and to make this a reality. I want to thank them. And as well, you have the volunteers who helped out. And so just a personal thank you for all of you folks for doing that, and those who let me stay at their place and plug in and use their facilities. Thank you very much. And also there was those who donated to the campaign. Some people donated a significant amount, maximum contributions. We want to thank you for that. We don't think it was in vain, because this is a red pilling of, the society. The information that we shared with people was something that they weren't just getting from their regular MPs. The MPs basically are just, saying everything's okay. It'll work out, we got problems, but, doesn't matter that the house is on fire. We got fire extinguishers. We'll put it out and it'll be all nice, and meanwhile, the PPCers are saying, hey, the house is on fire, and letting people know. So there's a lot of red pilling going on, and that was very good and needed actually. So we have a situation here where many people still voted for the Liberals, even though there was all the corruption and all the issues, and it just it goes to show that the Canadian public are just out of touch with what's really going on, and they don't see the grave dangers that we're facing. Again, illustrated for Western Canada was how the East dominates the whole process here. And now you have rise to Alberta separation in a big way. Wexit leading the charge, actually, and they're doing the best job as far as showcasing themselves and making things go. I would estimate that probably right now 20% of Albertans would vote for Alberta separation, but it's not really, everyone is not drumming the drums down the street saying we got to separate. You'll see it online and everything else, and there's a lot of strength to it. The supporters are strong, but really as an overall thing, it has a long ways to go, actually. But that's definitely on the rise, and I can see it in a couple of years where you might end up with a 40-50% vote on that, because we're going to be destroyed by the federal government. The federal government's going to absolutely crush Alberta. They're crushing us now, and as it affects more people, then they'll be able to understand what's going on and say, well, hey, we got to take a look at this. So that is going on, and one thing that I learned personally on this whole venture was how deep and thorough the corruption is, and how complicit so many levels of society are to what's going on. I'm talking about the people who are the leaders and the people in the know. A lot of things are held in secret that people don't know about. For instance, with UNDRIP, no one knew about UNDRIP, except for the politicians. The MPs, they knew about it, but they weren't telling the people. And even I know that there's people who are working in the provincial government in BC who were given gag orders. They weren't allowed to speak about it, not even to family members. And this has been going on for years, okay? All of this is being rolled out, and unbeknownst to the people until it is being rolled out, which it is being rolled out now, actually. And so there's the level of corruption all throughout the various different stratas of society, right from the politicians on down to corporations being complicit, town mayors and councillors, all the way down to the local newspaper, some of those people. And as I went around, I talked to people in different towns. There's 3 different towns that I went to where, and I didn't initiate the conversation on this, but they just talked about how their towns have been taken over by those involved in secret societies. And those people who are involved in those secret societies, they need to understand what they're really getting involved in. They're going to gain a lot by being involved in that, with better opportunities, business ventures, popularity, all these kind of things. There'll be a lot of perks for sure, but there's going to be a very heavy price to pay in the end. And it just, seriously, take a look at what you're doing there, you folks. But I knew all this stuff 35 years ago. That's when my red pilling really began, and it was an intellectual, understanding, and I could see it. And like you saw what was going on even in the 80s with the whole thing of globalism with Brian Mulroney, and then you saw television commercials talking about the world as, one big society, and globalism and all these kind of things are being pushed, pretty hard. It was quite shocking even back then, actually. But many people weren't seeing it. They just, it was just something new that was happening, and they just accepted it and bought into it. And this has been going on forever. So I've had this understanding for a very long time, and it's kind of a side hobby of mine where I kind of research it and whatnot. But going into this election and just getting more up close and personal with it all, and seeing it for myself and with my eyes, was really shocking, quite frankly. And it went from my head intellectually to my heart. And quite frankly, it's had a big impact on me. Like I've been grieving for Canada ever since the election, quite frankly, a deep sorrow, and I need to pull out of it, quite frankly. I mean, and I am actually, but for those of us who know what's going on, it causes us tremendous concern. So seeing that, I kind of joke with people when I talk to them. They say, "Why are you kind of blue, Ron? What's going on?" And I say, man, I've gone down the rabbit hole too far now, and I don't know if I can find my way back out. Or I say, I've been ruined as a human being, I just know too much now. I just, it's on a different level altogether than it was before. And I try to explain it to them, and it just goes over their heads. And people just don't understand the evil that's involved with what's going on. So for myself on a personal level, that was the most dramatic thing, I guess. But as I went around and talked to people, 80% of people didn't realize the PPC even existed, and that was a big problem that we had. So we ended up making ourselves known. I mean, we had our lawn signs and our big 4 foot by 4 foot signs spread all over the place, and as people drove by, and tens of thousands of people saw those signs, if not more. And we also had our brochures that we handed out. There's 25,000 that went out, and there's some important things that were brought up on there as well. So the really difficult part in all of this is that you have the Canadian public have no clue what's going on. They've all been kind of brainwashed by the media propaganda, just by the whole state of things. You got the politicians saying, it's okay, there's not a big problem, and all these things. And you also have it, with every level of society pushing this agenda. It's basically the UN Agenda 2030 right now. I mean, that's the big thing. It was Agenda 21 with Brian Mulroney and those guys. They brought all that in. But really, Agenda 2030, think of it as like the difference between, it used to be climate change and now it's a climate emergency. Yeah, so the Agenda 2030 is now the fast tracking of Agenda 21, really. And it just goes through, permeates everywhere. If you keep your eyes open, you'll see it everywhere. It's just, the indoctrination is so complete, it's unbelievable. Now here's an example of something that just came up this weekend, actually, in a local church. And now this would go to probably millions of people in Canada, okay? And I want to read a little bit to you from this. So this is what the churches are handing out to people. It says, why care? How much does Canada give towards ending global poverty and hunger? Global poverty and hunger, where have you heard that before? To end it, okay? And it goes on talking about how Canada only gives, 1.7% of its budget towards these things. And it says we can make a difference. We can invest more to transform the lives of those in need, good stuff, in a sense. But it says here, sign this postcard. Let the Prime Minister know that when it comes to ending global poverty and hunger, that you care. Let your Prime Minister know that you care. Goes on in the back here. It says, when it comes to ending global hunger, the church matters. It says here that God loves justice. Now, that's a buzzword that you have to learn and recognize and see, because it's all throughout the UN global agendas. Okay, God loves justice. And then it goes and says Isaiah 61:8, Psalms 33:5, and then 99:4. And God requires us to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with him. Micah 6:8, Amos 5:22-24. And catch this. It says that God's love is reflected, okay, when the church calls upon our leaders to work towards ending hunger once and for all. God loves this. This is what God is telling you to do as a Christian, right? Where else can we go with this? Then in bold here it says that we need the Canadian government to increase the aid budget to help make this goal a reality. The transfer of wealth goal. the redistribution of wealth, the bringing down the wealth of Canada to, the higher and hiring the levels of the countries that we're going to be giving this money to. This global communist goal of Agenda 2030, which Stephen Harper and the Conservatives adopted, that goal, yeah, that's the goal we're talking about. And it says here, would you consider signing the postcard addressed to the Prime Minister, letting him know you care about Canada's role in ending global hunger and poverty? It's just unbelievable. That, and then you've got this whole thing of the acknowledgement of the Aboriginals in the beginning of meetings and everything else. I talked to a Christian school teacher, and every morning, the principal would get on and talk about, the things and announcements and whatnot. And there they go. We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 land and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, it's even happening in the Christian university here too as well. It's all brand new here in Alberta. It's been going on in BC for 4 years. But people just accept it. They don't ask the question like, why is this happening and whatnot. I've let a lot of people know who are, making these decisions to go through what's going on with all of this, and encourage them to go and look at the Caribou Recovery video. If you haven't seen the Caribou Recovery video, you really need to go and educate yourself. It's not just about caribou recovery. It's far deeper than that. It's dramatic. And so this is what we're having happen now in Canada. We have the Liberals with a minority government. Now in my riding, it seemed to me that I was dealing with a very conservative riding, actually, and I was going up against Bob Zimmer. Now, Bob Zimmer did a very good job connecting with the people. The people really like Bob Zimmer up there, and I can understand why. He's a very nice guy to talk to and whatnot. But I don't know. Has he talked about Agenda 2030? Has he warned the people about UNDRIP? When we were going through our debates, we had 8 debates in the riding. We were driving all over the place, man. I think I spent $2,000 just in fuel, just driving around to these different debates. But in all of them, I mentioned UNDRIP and I mentioned caribou recovery and these types of things. And Bob was quiet as a mouse. He, wasn't talking too much about it. Did talk a little bit about the caribou recovery and a couple of things, but it wasn't until the second last debate in Mackenzie that he acknowledged that UNDRIP has been going on for a long time, okay? And that the Conservatives have adopted it, and it's gone through. And at that point in time, actually, what was happening is just before the election, I saw something on, I think it was CTV or something, where they were talking about Bill 262 and 91 and 92, I think it was, talking about the implementation of UNDRIP. And there were some brave senators who were blocking it. The issue is that all levels of society are implementing this whole thing, and it's coming from the top down, and people need to question what's going on with all of this and not just go along with it. So what was happening then is we were giving out tremendous information to the people, in newspaper articles. We were recorded in the media, television as well. You had all of our materials handed out there, and it's a big wake-up call for everyone to kind of see, hey, what are they talking about here with this UN stuff and these various different edicts that are coming down. But people still voted overwhelmingly for Bob Zimmer in my riding, 70% actually, which was shocking. I thought that we would have got at least 10%. But the thing is that people doubled down, I think, actually, to vote for the Conservatives, not because of the PPC per se. Some didn't like the PPC. They thought we were just splitting the votes and being selfish. But the other ones were just so worried about Justin Trudeau and what he was going to do that they just feared. And so they thought there was some virtue in voting for the Conservatives. And they doubled down on that. But what they have to realize, and this is something that as PPCers we need to get the word out, is that if they elect a PPC candidate versus a Conservative candidate, it doesn't mean that it's going to be more power to Justin Trudeau, because it's the votes in the House, right? And anything that that is of a conservative nature, whether it's fiscal or how they run the country, that we would be voting in favor of those things, contrary to, maybe what the government would want, right? So we would be on side with many things of the Conservatives anyhow. The beneficial part of having the PPC there is that we would have a voice now, and we would talk about things that no one else will even talk about. All these Conservative MPs, they got maybe a gag order on them or something. Or they don't want to rock the boat, or something is going on where they're not really discussing the real issues in the open and dramatic way that it has to be done. So for those of you who voted for the Conservatives in fear of the Liberals, just think about it. Vote for PPC. Because now you can go ahead and have a true voice, a true representation. Now, after the election, there was the Freedom Conference held in Red Deer, and people were really upset about what would happen at the election. And there must have been, 1,500 people who showed up to that. And we were there. Maxime Bernier was there, and the PPC candidates showed up. And when I was there, I had asked a person who I respect, very brave, courageous person who's a Christian, and I said, what is your spiritual analysis of what has transpired, Caught the person off guard, so I would probably get a more detailed and more intricate answer now. But the answer was basically that it's just like the film Rocky, where round one, Rocky gets totally whipped, and whooped, but eventually in the end, Rocky wins, right? And I accepted that, but the thing is that my answer would have been, and I didn't really say it then, was that we don't really have time for multiple rounds in order to win. We don't even have time for 3 rounds. 3 more elections, even if you have an election in 2 years, Canada's going to be, basically done. We're going to have passed the tipping point and at the point of no return. So, so where are things going with all of this? So on one end, I was hoping for that we could actually have a breakthrough and that we could actually go ahead and take things back. Now with Eastern Canada so solidly, doing what they're doing, voting for really the death of Canada unwittingly, we're at a crossroads here, and I can totally understand the Wexit mentality of Alberta, because we're pushed in a corner here for a very survival, as economically anyhow. But is there another angle to this whole thing? Since I was talking to a Christian about it, the Christian perspective on a different level would be that Revelation 13 is in play here. All right, Revelation 13, for those of you who may not know, it's quite dramatic. It talks about some beasts and stuff like that, but I'll just read it here a little bit here. It says, and causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. That's pretty important. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath a mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom, if you want to have wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, so what could be happening is just basically we're going into this whole thing of world government, because here you have no man may buy or sell. You can have a situation where it's digital currency, where there's a total totalitarian state involved. You have the UN. They basically say they're 65% towards a world government. And they want to be able to have a world government in play by 2030, right? 2030 is a very important date. 2030, you got the UN Agenda 2030. Big goals are stated for Agenda 2030. And most people have no clue what even that is. And if you just go ahead and look up on the internet, Agenda 2030, and just read their 17 points, you'll probably agree with a lot of them. But you don't understand the implications if you do agree with those. But big things are to happen. And even those who actually helped create this whole thing, who are a part of it, who are in the know, they state that these are radical changes that are about to happen. And I'd say brace yourself. What we could be seeing here is actually the playing out of a Revelation 13 scenario where basically a world hybrid communism takes over. And there is pushback in the world. You know, you see Trump pushing back on it. Basically, he says that he will not recognize the World Court. He also stated at the UN that he doesn't believe in globalism and that he believes in nationalism. And this has sparked, you know, all kinds of a resurgence, I guess, in different countries. You got Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, I believe. There's other ones that are pushing back, right? France with the Yellow Vest movement. Hong Kong, right? The people in Hong Kong, they're pushing back. So you have this kind of in play too. And I thought what could happen with the PPC is that we could buy ourselves some time and that, you know, we could go ahead and gain back things and push things back. But it could be that we are actually entering into this phase, something that we have to look at possibly happening. And I just like to quickly go over some of the stuff here because it's quite interesting. Now, a lot of the Christian community believe that this mark that they receive in their right hand or forehead would be some kind of chip that you would get implanted in your hand or in your forehead. But really, if you're going to be able to understand what this is talking about, you have to let the Bible interpret itself, right? And so you go and look and see where else in the Bible it talks about this kind of terminology, and you go ahead into Deuteronomy chapter 6 is one. Now, Moses had just given the law to the people again, reiterated it. And he says here, you know, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. In verse 6, it says, these words which I command thee this day shall be in your heart. Now, it also says in the Bible that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? So the heart also represents the mind. And in verse 8, this is where the clincher is. It says, and thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. Now, the priests, they had, I think it's called the phylacteries, where they had a box on their forehead with the 10 Commandments written on there. So basically, it represents having God's law within our mind, right? And so here you have a situation where it talks about having God's law in your mind. And, you know, it's not just Old Testament stuff either, right? Also in Hebrews 10:16, and there's other different passages like it. It says, I will put my laws in their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. So, so back in the day, Old Testament times, they would actually wear a band of blue around their wrists, right? And blue represented the 10 Commandments. And so whenever they would go and reach out and do something, you know, they reminded, you know, am I doing what's right here, you know, with my hands? And also it's to be in your mind. So this Revelation 13 issue could be something completely different than just a chip, right? And it also talks about 666. And if you understand the issue of 666, people have guessed all kinds of things. People thought that Pierre Trudeau was, you know, this beast or whatever, this Antichrist person, because you know, it's the name of a man, and he had on the back of his Mercedes a license plate with 666, right? So people come up with all kinds of different ideas on it, but really it's much more profound than that. Again, what you want to do is you want to start looking around and seeing what else is spoken about in the Bible on that, and so let it interpret itself. So you have the number 6. 666 is only spoken about one time in Revelation 13 there. But 6 is talked about in creation in Genesis chapter 1, where mankind was created on the 6th day, right? And so you have a tripling of the 6. It could be a deification of mankind, which falls into play with what actually happened in chapter 3 when the serpent spoke to Eve and said, you know, that, if you eat of this fruit of the tree, that you will be as gods, right? And that your eyes will be opened and great things will happen to you. And then you have after that happened in Genesis 3:22, I don't know if you've seen that 322 number kicking around anywhere. And then you have in Genesis 3:22, I don't know where you've seen that number before. Have you seen that number floating around? Yeah, well, 3:22, and it says, "And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil." So this whole thing of 666, in my understanding, is actually the deification of mankind, that we can actually become as gods. And there's a whole movement now basically kind of promoting that, right? Hinduism does that. A lot of these yoga and various different things, you yoke with your infinite self, yoke with Brahman, that basically we are creators in a sense. And that, like you got the movie The Matrix, right? Where basically we are living in a matrix. All of these things around us are, constructs, basically a physical prison to hold us, our spiritual self down, that we are truly God, really. And that we need to go ahead and break the confines of this prison. Now, some of you say, well, hey, why are we talking about all this kind of stuff? But basically, when you start looking at society and you start understanding the influence of ancient religions, spirituality, you'll find these things are everywhere, right? For instance, when it comes down to this whole issue of 666 and the deification of mankind, you'll see it really is the worship of the sun, moon, and stars, and this you'll find all throughout society. Here's some examples, okay, real quick. You got the days of the week. You got a 7-day week, right? The very first day of the week is Sunday, and that's the number one ruling god. The sun, when it pulls up in the sky, it dominates, right? So number one ruling god is the sun, and you got Sunday, number one. Number two, what would it be? It'd be the moon, right? The moon is the next big significant planet out there, and it dominates the night sky. So you got the moon, you got Moon Day, Monday. Then you've got Mars on Tuesday, you got Mercury on Wednesday, Jupiter on Thursday, Venus on Friday, and then Saturn Day, Saturday. So the whole days of the week are basically dominated by this whole paganism. And the ancients, what they would do is, they would watch these planets as the sun would arc in the sky, right? There was an 18-degree window that they'd watch, and they'd see these planets all serpentine throughout these things. And this gave birth to astrology as we know it, and various different things. And this whole circle of the sun was divided into 12 houses, right? So you got the number 12. 12 is a very significant number. It goes all throughout everything. You got 12 inches to a foot. You got 12 eggs or whatever, 12 to a dozen. You got 12 points in pica type. You got 12 kings, queens, and jacks in a deck of cards. That's why cards are a fundamental issue when it comes to astrology, or to, not astrology, I guess it would be, but to be able to tell your future and to connect with spirits and all these other kinds of things. And each one of these houses was divided into 3 rooms. So you have 3 times 12, you end up with 36. So you end up with 36 rooms around this circle. And the circle of the zodiac is also represented by a tail in its mouth. So you have the serpent in the Garden of Eden saying that you shall not surely die, that you shall be as God. And with the circle being with a snake with its tail in its mouth is kind of like a symbol for eternal life, that whole thing that was told Eve. And so you got 36 is everywhere as well. You got 36 inches to a yard. A circle is 36 degrees of, 36 segments of 10 degrees. You got a roulette wheel. It has 36 parts. You have 36 numbered cards in a deck as well. So 36 is very prominent as well. So another thing that's really quite compelling with this whole thing is that not only did you have the arc of the sun going through, and you have the 18 degree and with all of the planets going through there, but the whole entire solar system was divided up into 36 squares, with each one having their own ruling god, which is a star, actually. Okay, here's that magic square, and it's pretty fascinating, quite frankly. So it's 36 squares in total, and this is what the the sky was mapped out as with the ruling gods. You have 6 rows vertically, 6 rows horizontally. The amazing thing is that as you add up each row horizontally, let's say, you'll end up with 111, and you'll have each row adding up to 111. So the summary number there is 666. The same thing happens when you do it vertically. That's the stunning part about it. And also as you go corner to corner as well. So thus 666 then is the summary number of the whole system of astrological and pagan worship. And that created beings can become as God, right? Here it says the diagram of mystic numbers and amulets worn by pagan sun-worshipping priests, vertically and horizontally from corner to corner. They add up to 666. Myself, about 1983, I was at NAIT, and I was in my 3rd year carpentry apprenticeship class, and we were being taught about townships. Like here in Alberta, the whole countryside is divided up into townships. There's 36 square miles in total, but 6 either way. And then I got a hold of this information about a year or 2 later, and I must say that was one of my big red pill moments way back then in the mid-'80s, and how this astrological system of worship is hidden in plain sight, and there's powerful forces behind everything. I think that was the big takeaway back then, is that there's just huge influence and power on this occultic side in play, right? And the average person has absolutely no clue what's going on. So the 666 in Revelation 13 doesn't have to do with so much a chip in your hand or your forehead, although you don't want to get chipped, of course. But it's more to do with who is your God. Will you be your own God, or are you going to have another God? The one who created all things. Who are you going to worship? So you have, it's interesting how stars are gods, right? And you look at Hollywood, and you got the Hollywood stars, and with a 5-pointed star on top of it. A 5-pointed star, when it points up, is good magic, and pointing down is black magic, And even, Hollywood itself, the name Hollywood, I mean, it was a Hollywood tree that witches would make their wands out of. So when Hollywood casts its spell on you, it's talking about kind of witchcraft here with all of that. So with all of that, 6 is a very important number. And there's different words that actually would spell 6 in the Hebrew and Chaldean. And you got SAS, S-A-S. You got the SAS, the elite forces there, anti-terrorist group. Britain, you've got SS as well, can represent 6. You got ABBA as well. You got letters for 6 as well. Prominent letters are the letter V, which is important, F and S. F. Okay, so the letter V, peace, brother. There's a letter V right there. Have you seen this before, like Nixon putting his arms up like that and, talking? How many 6s you got there? You got 1, 2, and then you got another 6, right? 666, right in broad daylight. Then you've got, have you seen this before? Do that. How many V's you got there? You got 1, then you got 2, and then 3, right? 666. The deification of mankind. And when I was at my aunt's funeral, I was a pallbearer, and I was standing beside the coffin. And I don't know if it was a priest and someone else or who did it, but they went and placed this long, it's about 1 foot wide, all the way across, tip to tail on the coffin, and it had a draping down with some nice, things on the, nice things on the end, make it look pretty. But on there was 3 sets of V on one side and 3 sets of V on the other. 666, 666. I wasn't very happy about that, to see that. But anyhow, okay, so where are we going with this? Okay, and I'll end this here right away here. So 6 is a very important number, and many things could represent the number 6, okay? Okay, now you have the sun as being the number 1 ruling god, and many things can actually represent the sun in symbolism, okay? It can be a fertilizing heavenly bull. A snake can represent the sun. You've got a cross can represent the sun, and also a lightning bolt. As well as that, though, you also have a nail can represent a lightning bolt. Okay, so when Jesus was hung up on the cross, a symbol of the sun god, which would be Lucifer, right? Then he was nailed with 3 nails, 3 lightning bolts, 666, right? So there you have displayed on the cross the whole controversy between good and evil. You have a symbol of the sun, or a symbol of Lucifer, that he would be willing to go ahead and destroy and kill God, right? And then you also have God's representative there, Jesus, representing God's love for humanity, that God is willing to lay down his life that you may live, right? It's just powerful, gives me shivers as I think about it. So this whole thing of 666 is quite fascinating, and we'll leave it at that, I guess. But this, we could be seeing, that we're rolling into this period of time. Hope not. It's not going to be very easy, that's for sure. Do you know that there was over 900,000 Christians martyred for their faith in the last 10 years in the world? Yeah. And this justice that's coming, you go look at South Africa and the justice that's going on over there with the white farmers are being killed, and their land being taken. Well, okay, so to wrap up, we're in a situation now where Agenda 2030 is going to be fully implemented, unless we have a situation where it's going to take a miracle, actually, really, because all of the parties, you got the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Greens, and I'd even put the Bloc in there as well, as being UN Globalist parties. Now, the reason I include the Bloc in that is if you go and look at the October 7th leadership debate, where Maxine finally was able to speak, they had shut him down completely before that, but I think it's section 3, they talk about Aboriginal issues. And in there, you had Elizabeth May, you had Jagmeet Singh, and you had the Bloc as well state that they are going to fully implement UNDRIP. The Conservatives kind of made it look like, we're not going to, but hey, they've gone along with it already. So don't be fooled by that. And the other shocking thing is actually, if you want to know where we're going in the future, projecting, if things continue on as they are, because I believe that, I don't think these other parties are going to go ahead and upset the Liberals myself. It could happen, I'm hoping that it will, but they're all on the same page. They're all pushing for the same thing. So I think that they would side with the Liberals in many ways and have a coalition. So we'll see. But if you want to know where things are going, man, listen to Elizabeth May in her opening remarks, and even when she talks about the Aboriginal issues. I mean, it is straight 100% out of the UN playbook. Radical things are coming to a neighborhood near you. That's where we're headed. That's where the future is going. Unless the Canadian people can wake up to our dire situation and that we can actually go ahead and effect change. This is a very daunting task because we don't have the mainstream media on our side. We've been shadow banned and made to look bad. You had Warren Kinsella and all of that, the hit pieces that were done on us. And so it's a very challenging thing. You do have Wexit though, and Wexit could rally and wake people up. But it's not looking very good, quite frankly. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. I think the job that we have as individuals is to go ahead and to share what we can. I mean, I've been sharing this kind of red pilling information for 35 years. And, back then it was very difficult because people just thought you were off the rails sharing some of this stuff. And doing it now, I mean, a lot of people are really up to speed. It's amazing. I mean, I've met people, I was shocked. I said to them, how do you know so much? Because I've never really encountered that so much. It was very rare, actually. But it's a broader spectrum of people now. And actually, I've learned from you guys even. I mean, that's a new day for me on this topic. Anyhow, I've learned lots of people from, lots of things from people all through my life. But when it comes to this whole kind of topic, I was kind of out there by myself in many ways for many years, decades. with other, a few other individuals, but now it's a new day, and people commenting in Facebook, people commenting on the YouTube channels. I mean, you end up with some new information that's amazing. So this is very good, and this is what we have to do. It's people just want to stay blue-pilled, though. They don't want to know what's going on. They just want to live their life, and I can totally understand it. And but anyhow, so we have our job to do, and myself, I need to do a little bit of recovery actually from this whole thing, and there's many ways that I guess I'd call it. I want to be able to go into a blue pill existence, like to a certain degree. Like I know too much already, but to be able to kind of leave it, not have it be so intense, and kind of just go away and live my life a little bit, and just kind of enjoy things, just get away from it to a certain degree. There we are. Let's go forward into 2020 and see what we can do, and see where things play out. We could still have some dramatic shifts and changes, and I'm hopeful that we can have that. But if not, well, we'll have to plan and see where we fit into the whole scheme of things as it all plays out. Let's go ahead and move forward and see where things transpire. And thank you so much. And I'd say stay subscribed, because you're going to hear things that you probably won't hear in most other places by staying with this channel. All right, well, thanks a lot, and best to you. Happy New Year.